Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now please welcome Tom Gale, advisor at SVN Hintz Commercial Real Estate, to give our invocation.
Thank you, President Todd. Next to air, water is our most essential necessity. An estimated 785 million people around the world don't have access to basic drinking water. Clean water helps free children from deadly, preventable diseases. It liberates women and children from long hours spent gathering water, contaminated water. Clean water restores health and opens the door to education, a promising future, and the kind of life God intends for his children. Loving God, we ask for your blessings for our children, mothers, fathers, and communities who are thirsty. Purify, protect, and multiply their water resources. Strengthen their resolve so that they may fully enjoy the benefits of clean water. Essentials like education, gardens of fresh produce, and good health. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink.
Thank you, Tom. You guys can be seated. I'd also like to thank all our sponsors for supporting Rotary. Their logos appeared on the screens before the presentation. If your organization would be interested in supporting Rotary through either a short video or a logo on the rotating presentation before the meetings, please contact Mary in the Rotary office. We have a good number of guests here today, and we'd like to recognize you. So when I call your name, please stand. We've got Suki and Ben Moore, Charlie James's daughter and son-in-law. Rodney Hill, Charlie James's transportation director. We have Kimberly Gleffy, RRF's highly esteemed executive director. We've got Jane LeCapitaine and Ray Krieger, longtime and valued board members. We have Katie Petralia, an integral part of RRF's strong team. We also have Gene and Jerry Coleman here of the Tarpon Springs Rotary Club. So they are visiting us from the Tarpon Springs Club, and we did the Rotary flag exchange. So to add to our collection, we have the Tarpon Springs, Florida flag to share with everybody. We have Nidhi Koshop, Court Commissioner of Milwaukee County, Andy Bachman from Idaho Labs, Millie Kobe from Employ Milwaukee. So welcome everybody to the Rotary Club. We're glad to have you here today. All right, before we get into some Rotary business, we do have a special celebration today. So yesterday, longtime Rotarian Charlie James celebrated his 90th birthday. Charlie has been a member of Rotary for 63 years and has dedicated his time and treasure to this club across 6 decades. On your tables, you'll find the People of Action profile written by Mary Bullish that highlights Charlie's great career as a Rotary member, a community leader, a friend, a father, a grandfather, and a husband. So today we are starting a new tradition. We will celebrate 90th birthdays for Rotarians with a cake and song at Rotary. So please join me in wishing Charlie a happy birthday by singing Happy Birthday. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Charlie. Happy birthday to you. And now Charlie has a few words to share.
First of all, I wish there were 90 candles on this cake. I wouldn't be able to blow them all out, that's for sure. But I want you to know that I love the Rotary Club of Milwaukee, and that's why I've been a member for 63 years. And I just love all the members here. Everyone is my friend. And I can't tell you how sad I am that about a year ago, right about now, my wife passed away, and I can't tell you how much I miss her. And I've established a Rotary scholarship in her honor, and thank you so much for your appreciation of that. I love everyone here, and I can't tell you, this lady over here, Mary, she's been our director for at least 63 years, and she doesn't look a day older than she did when I became a Rotary member. But oh my goodness, one of these candles went out and I didn't even blow it. I must be talking to now. The other one is going out. Yeah, there.
Charlie, obviously, you know that we love you all very much, and we're so glad to have the chance to celebrate with you today. So thank you for all you do for Rotary and for being a great leader in the community. Just Milwaukee wouldn't be the same without you. And actually, John Frankie has something he wants to say too.
Happy birthday, Charlie. When Mary told me it was your birthday, I thought, well, what rhymes with 75? I thought. What? You hear me? About Charlie, have a seat. Have a seat. Yeah. About Charlie, I can say with assurance, he did much more than just sell insurance. One thing he enjoys, helping girls and boys clubs. Carol is with you, and she admires your endurance. Happy birthday.
So thank you very much, Charlie, for everything you've done for Rotary over the years. And, I know there's lots of scholars who in the future will appreciate the scholarship done in your wife's memory to help them go to school and create successes in their own lives. So her memory will continue to live on. And thank you for everything. And just again, for everybody's reference, the sheets on the table, one side has some background and some history on Carol, and on the other side, just what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a biography on Charlie. So please take a moment and look at those, and they will be cutting the cake up and bringing those around. So, boy, what a delightful way to start a Rotary meeting. Thank you again, Charlie, for everything. It really reminds us of the value of relationships and the commitment each Rotarian can make, not only to the club, but to the community as a whole. One of the announcements is, I believe right now, Rotary, we need Rotary now more than ever, and we're a unique organization that encourages connecting, learning, and making a difference in our community and around the world. And part of making that difference is continuing to invite people to share the Rotary experience with us. So, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago at the August board meeting, the board made a goal of bringing in 50 new Rotary members by June 30th, 2022. And the board members committed to bringing in 25 of those. They also challenged the other 300 members of the club to match that number. So Mary Opplinger, President and CEO of the Florentine Opera, and our recruitment committee chair, upon hearing that, she thought they could easily meet and eventually exceed the board's challenge. And a contest was kind of born here. So we are keeping score. And if you look, board members have brought in 2 so far, and the rest of the club, or the good guys, as Aaron likes to refer to them as. I don't know what that says for the board, but they're at 4. So obviously, board's outnumbered 300 to 23 and down by 2. So there's there's some catching up to do. Granite Hills was created as a new resource for behavioral health and will provide intensive day programs and inpatient care to address the growing demand of mental health services in Wisconsin. It'll be a unique opportunity to explore the facility before the patients arrive. So thanks to Jerry Stepaniak for making these arrangements. You'll find the details either on the sheet on your table or in the email that everybody should receive following lunch. So please sign up or go to the website to RSVP. Finally, a number of Rotarians have expressed interest in finding meaningful ways to provide support to the Afghan refugees that are settling in Wisconsin. We're kind of on the ground floor of this at this point, so if you would like to join the conversation, please gather in the Rotary office immediately following the meeting, and we can kind of share our thoughts and see if there is a way for Rotary to assist in a lot of the refugees coming into Wisconsin. If you're here virtually and you can't make it in today physically, email Aaron and you can be added to the group moving forward. Now, Margaret Crawford, founder of Crawford & Associates Consulting, will introduce our speaker.
I am also a board member for River Revitalization Foundation and the co-chair of the Greenway Coalition. The River Revitalization Foundation was founded back in 1994, and it really was a collaborative effort between the Kiwanis Club of Milwaukee and also the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. So over our 27-year history, we have protected over 800 acres, including establishing the Milwaukee River Greenway. We've created 5 miles of riverfront trail connections, planted thousands of native trees and plants, restored over 45 acres of habitat, and we've engaged hundreds of students and volunteers and invested over $5 million in the River Valley. So that's just a brief description of River Revitalization Foundation. And you have all been a part of supporting that, whether you know it or not. And Rotary has supported our organization in so many different ways. Let me give you just a few examples. Well, the first is that we've, throughout the years, had 5 Rotarians that have been representing the club on its board. Currently, those Rotarians include Sarah Kimball and Chris Jacobs, Matt Haas, Paige Radke, and me. 2 years ago, we celebrated our 25th anniversary, and at that time, the club made a multi-year contribution. Each summer, the club has provided support to our River Interns program. In addition, not the least of which, the Rotary Centennial Arboretum. On behalf of RRF, I want to thank each of you for contributing to that. RRF was fortunate to have Eddie Daniel, today's speaker, serve as an artist in residence. Eddie is a Milwaukee-based fine art photographer and writer. A graduate of UW-Madison and UWM, he brings to his current practice over 30 years of experience teaching art and writing about nature. Eddie serves on the board of directors of Preserve Our Parks, and he also is the author of a book, Urban Wilderness, Exploring a Metropolitan Watershed. That is both a visual and also a narrative tribute to the Menominee River. RRF has published his most recent book, The Milwaukee River Greenway, A Wealth of Nature in the Heart of the City. John Gerda, that I know you are all familiar with, wrote in a recent article, quote, "The book is both a compelling narrative and a visual poem to the unexpected beauty of our principal waterway." Eddie is here today to share the story about how the Greenway came to be protected, and his stunning photographs will demonstrate what a treasure we all have in our midst. Eddie. Let me mention, too, before I forget, that his book will be available for purchase in the lobby. They are $30 each, and $5 of that amount goes to River Revitalization Foundation.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, Rotary Club of Milwaukee, for inviting me to speak to you today. It is a tremendous thrill. I have given many of these similar kinds of talks to a lot of different audiences, but because of your commitment to the Greenway, as was outlined just now by Margaret, it is an amazing thing for me, and I'm so honored to be here speaking in front of you, and I have a treat for you. But before I start my talk, I just want to say happy birthday to Charlie myself and give him the first book to the Rotary Club. I hope you're aware that we are in the midst of 15 weeks of celebration of the Milwaukee River Greenway. And if you're not familiar, before I start, so let me just back up a second. How many of you have been to the Greenway? Most of you, so I don't have to say much to you. The pictures may help you, but if you haven't been down to the Milwaukee Greenway, maybe it's because you're not familiar with what the Greenway is. The beginning of the Milwaukee River Greenway Coalition, which is the organization of like-minded groups that support the Greenway. My role with River Revitalization Foundation has been as artist in residence. I'm finishing 2 years of that, and the book that I'm sharing with you today is the culmination of my work as artist in residence. And this is through a program known as Art Servancy, which was initiated by a gallery an art gallery in Port Washington called Gallery 224. And the idea behind that was to partner artists with a number of preserves in different places around. Initially, it was just Ozaukee County, but obviously it's expanded into Milwaukee County. And I want to take you on a trip down the river. Among the industries that were the most notable industry that built up behind the dam was logging, the sawmill industry. But one of the big industries was this one, the National Brake and Electric Company. Does anybody know where this was located? Somewhere along the Greenway. But I bet you know what's there now. This is the Rotary Centennial Arboretum. Took the place of that massive factory. That massive factory, by the way, was instrumental in building tanks and munitions for World War I, railroad engines, and all kinds of other heavy machinery for all kinds of industries. It lasted until the Depression when it went out of business, and then the buildings were demolished, the land lay fallow for about 70 years until the Urban Ecology Center and the River Revitalization Foundation and the Rotary Club of Milwaukee helped create the Arboretum. Industry was not the most important thing that happened behind the North Avenue Dam, however. Most of the industry that built up as a result of the dam was south of the dam, but north of the dam, a huge lake, a long, thin lake was created that stretched all the way up to Capitol Drive, and it became up north in the city. If you've heard John Gerda talk about his recent book, A City Built on Water, he likes to talk about this, and it's a very important feature of the history of the Milwaukee River. This area of the Milwaukee River that we're calling the Greenway used to be out in the countryside, and people from downtown Milwaukee and the residential areas around that would come up to what is now called the Greenway and recreate. Here you see the Gordon Park Bathhouse, which no longer exists in Gordon Park in the wintertime. People use this for all kinds of things, all seasons long. And this is what it looks like today. The only remnant of that glorious looking bathhouse is a little wall, which you can barely see at the bottom of the picture here, that has some graffiti all over it. Otherwise, we have a much more well grown up stand of trees on the park in the bluff. Now, a quick tour. I'm going to try to be as quick as I can to take you down through the parks of the Milwaukee River Greenway from north to south, following the river. Up in the northern end of the Greenway is Lincoln Park, which at 372 acres is Milwaukee County's third largest park after Whitnall Park and Grant Park. Lincoln is the third, and it is a very well-developed park. If you remember the map at the beginning, it's the big bulge at the top of the map, the only broad part of the Greenway. One of the features of the Lincoln Park is the golf course. I'm personally not a golfer. I kind of like that there's turkeys on the golf course, which I happened to catch one day. Going south from Lincoln, we get to Estabrook Park, which is a very long, thin park, and notable for the falls, which you see in this picture, which are the only natural falls on the Milwaukee River in this area, in the Greenway. But Estabrook used to have a beach. This is a historic picture showing the beach that no longer exists, and here's what this view looks like today. We're on the west side of the river on a trail known as Westabrook Trail, and it's opposite Estabrook, and we're looking across the river at Estabrook. Same view as this. This is the Westabrook Trail. So if you start from the Holiday Inn on Fort Washington Road, you can hike along the west side of the Milwaukee River down to Capitol Drive along here. And one of the things you will see is this pair of sculptures. There are actually three altogether, or you can see two of them in the picture on the left and one on the right with the artist. His name is Tom Quaff, who designed these three sculptures using the remnants from the demolished Estabrook Dam. There was a dam in Estabrook Park across the Milwaukee River until 2018 when it was removed. And the stones were from the dam, and the piece that's standing, Tom Quaff is standing in front of that tripod-like looking concrete structure. That was one of what's known as shark's teeth that were placed outside the dam, out upstream of the river, of the gates of the dam, so that logs and other debris washing down the river would not, bump into the gates and damage the dam. So here's a reuse of that, the dam, the remnants of the dam. Behind the turtle sculpture that's made out of rocks is the third sculpture in the background was made out of one of the actual gates from the dam. I'd like to introduce you to Sierra Taliaferro, who wrote one of the stories in our book. The book is a highly collaborative effort. Many stories were contributed by many different people. Margaret mentioned the article in the Journal Sentinel by John Gerda, but John Gerda also contributed the foreword to this book and one of the stories about paddling down the river. So he's a significant contributor to the book too, and as is Sierra. Moving south again along the river is Kern Park, named after one of the industrialists of the 19th century who owned a flour mill just south of the North Avenue Dam. He had a big estate that became Kern Park. Kern Park is known for, among other things, having the largest London plane tree, which is known as a champion because it's the largest in the state of Wisconsin. Right here in our community, the largest of its species in Kern Park. The little flowers there are very, very, by contrast to the giant plane tree, they're very tiny little flowers. Moving south from there, we got to a very curious park named Pleasant Valley. If you had never heard of it, it's not surprising. Walking down the west side of the river through this park, you might never know it was there because there are no signs heralding its appearance. It's an official Milwaukee County park, but there are no signs. What there is a curious bridge, what you're seeing in this picture, which actually isn't a bridge. I mean, it looks like a bridge and acts like a bridge, but it's really an aqueduct. It was built to transport sewage from one place to another. They just put railings on top of it so people wouldn't fall off if they tried to cross it. It's often called the bridge to nowhere because it doesn't go anywhere. This is the site of some of the restoration projects that have been done in the Greenway. This was a bank that was severely eroded, and this is what it looked like 2 years later, much more well grown in. Across the river from Pleasant Valley is Hubbard Park. Most of the parks in the Greenway are Milwaukee County parks, but this one is a village of Shorewood Park. It's relatively small. It's got some WPA era buildings, which you can see in this picture. This picture was taken during the shutdown. I took this during the shutdown a year ago in 2020. As you can see, the people are being carefully socially distancing in the park there. Another view of Hubbard. One of the curious features of Hubbard is that it's in a little ravine, and the railroad that used to be there went over the ravine in an embankment, and you drove through a tunnel or you went through a pedestrian tunnel to get to the park, and you still do that. The railroad is gone, and it's been replaced by the Oak Leaf Trail, which ties together most of the Greenway. Oh, and when you come out of the tunnel, this is the view that you see. It's quite spectacular. Just south of Hubbard Park is Cambridge Woods, along with Pleasant Valley. And Cambridge Woods and Pleasant Valley are the two parks that are kind of the diametrically opposite parks to parks like Lincoln Park and Estabrook, because Lincoln and Estabrook are entirely developed as you would expect a county park to be developed, with playing fields and all kinds of amenities. And the golf course, and there's a big water park in Lincoln Park. By contrast, Cambridge Woods and Pleasant Valley are undeveloped parks. They are left to nature. So we have the whole range of management along our Greenway for all kinds of uses. As you can see from these pictures here, Cambridge is especially good in springtime ephemeral season when the flowers are out. Also featured in Cambridge Woods is what's known as the Tunnel to Nowhere. Not an official title, but colloquially known that way, because if you go into it, you will find it has a dead end. It used to have an opening on the other side, presumably, or other wouldn't have been built, but there was a ravine on the other side that got filled in when the neighborhood was developed behind there. Going south, I mentioned Gordon Park earlier. This is the view from Gordon Park across to Riverside Park, and I want to show you another comparison. There used to be a ski jump here. This is a historic picture again. Look at how many people. There are thousands of people lined up to observe the ski jump event, and this happened all the time. Throughout the winter, it was very popular. Like I said, the Greenway was where people went to recreate up north. It was a kind of winter wonderland in the winter, and it was a place to go boating and hiking and all the wonderful things you do in parks in the summertime. Quite a contrast with today. What happened to all of that? I'm going just back to a little bit of history here now. In the mid-20th century, people stopped doing all of that. And the primary reason, as we probably know, is because the river was too polluted. People were not interested in swimming anymore in a polluted river. It was even so smelly you didn't want to walk along next to it or any of that. So people stopped using the river for many, many years. And that was one of the key motivations for creating the Milwaukee River Greenway Coalition and the River Revitalization Foundation in order to transform it into what we are enjoying today. There's a trail that starts in Gordon Park and connects the park with Turtle Park at the southern end of the Greenway called the Beer Line Trail, and I'm sure you can guess why it's called that. There used to be a railroad on this site that transported beer, in one direction out from the breweries and ice into the breweries in the wintertime because they harvested ice on the river. On the other side of the river from Gordon is Riverside Park. Riverside Park, and this is, I have to introduce you to Ken Leinbach. Along with Kimberly Gleffy, Ken Leinbach is probably, the two of them are probably the most influential people who are responsible for preserving what we are enjoying today with the Greenway. Their efforts are just phenomenal, and he is the executive director of the Urban Ecology Center. And the Urban Ecology Center was started back in 1991, I believe it was. And the specific reason for starting the Urban Ecology Center was to take back Riverside Park because it had become a dangerous place. I don't have time to go into all the details on that, but it was wildly successful. Riverside Park was designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, the famous landscape architect. This is a historic postcard showing there was a pavilion on top of on part of the park, as you can see in the picture. That's no longer there today, but it was designed by Olmsted. There is a story a very, very nice story in the book by Virginia Small, who is an authority on Olmsted, and she wrote the story specifically for the book. Okay, what happened here? Oh, there we go. Can't miss this one. So just south of the Riverside Park, in fact, the Rotary, as you probably know, Rotary Centennial Arboretum officially includes Riverside Park. It's a 40-acre area. But when people think of the Arboretum, they usually think of the area right around this arch. How many of you have been to the Arboretum? Okay, good for you. It's your Arboretum. It's one of the special places. And so I showed you the picture of the factory that used to be there. This park was developed and opened in 2013, thanks to the Rotary Club and others. In fact, if you go and look at the big sculptural tribute that's in the Arboretum, there must be hundreds of names on that. So it was a community effort, obviously, to create this park. She's a little small in this picture, but Kim Forbeck is the land manager of the Urban Ecology Center. Here she is in the midst of the water. If you haven't been there in the summer season when the wildflowers are out, that's when you want to go. It's just spectacular, as you can see here. Connecting the Arboretum to the southern end of the park, of the Greenway, is the East Bank Trail, which actually originally just ran from Riverside to Caesars Park, but now runs all the way from one end of the Greenway to the other. You can walk all the way from Caesars Park to Lincoln Park without crossing a road, going under bridges all the way. It's quite remarkable. It's an 8-mile walk if you go all the way up to Silver Spring. This is an artist. If you've walked along the East Bank Trail, you might have noticed the murals on pillars, as you can see in this picture, under North Avenue. This is the artist who spearheaded that and designed it. Her name's Melanie Arians. And then we get to the southern end where Caesars Park is, and that's where the dam used to be and the bridge now is. And on the other side of the river is Turtle Park, which is owned and managed by River Revitalization Foundation. And that is, it's hard to see, but in the background is the roof of their building, their office building, which has plants growing all over. This green roof. And here is Kimberly, our executive director, who's with us today. Someone else you should know is Cheryl Nen, the Milwaukee River keeper, and she's holding a freshwater mussel. She wrote a very long section of the book about the wildlife. What have you seen if you've been down there? And what can you see? You can see all kinds of things, and I'll only give you a very quick, brief, I'm almost done, and we have to go quickly, very quick taste of the wildlife. There are big birds like the owls and eagles, and little birds like the hummingbird. There are reptiles, there are turtles, there are beavers, there are spiders and snakes, for all of those of you who like spiders and snakes. Real quick, connecting with the water. The river is part of what's known as the Milwaukee Urban Water Trail, and real quick, I'm going to take you down the river. Starting up in Lincoln Park, heading down through Estabrook and over the falls. I have a story about all these pictures, but I don't have time to tell you the whole story. Lots of people out there fishing in all seasons of the year, especially during spawning seasons, of course, when the fish are migrating. The most remarkable thing, I think, about the Milwaukee River Greenway is evident in this picture. Where is Milwaukee in this picture? Where is the city? This is a remarkable thing because this doesn't happen in cities. It happens here. In order to protect the Greenway, one of the provisions was to protect the view, not just the land. I love this concept. It is protecting not just land, it is protecting the experience of being in nature. When you're down in the river in the middle of this corridor, between bridges, of course, every now and then you cross under a bridge, but between bridges, you can pretend you're not in the city anymore. Oh, it's one of people's favorite things to do in the Greenway. Whoops, what did I do? Along with fishing, of course. I actually saw this guy kiss the fish. I didn't quite catch him with the camera, but he's letting go of the fish after kissing it. That's a salmon, by the way. At the southern end, this is the southern end of the Greenway, there's a landing. There's one in Lincoln Park to start out with. There's one in Kiwanis Landing in Turtle Park to end up with if you want to, at the two ends of the Greenway. Finally, I want to end with my favorite story in the book was one that Mark Denning helped me. Mark Denning is an Oneida Menominee Indian, and he teaches at UWM. And he asked me to take him on a kayak tour down the river because he wanted to invite members of his tribe to do the same later. So here we are. I went with him on a very cold day in March last spring. I've never gone kayaking in March on the Milwaukee River before. It was extremely cold. And then he did in April, then he invited a number of members of the Menominee Nation who live up on the reservation 170 miles north of here. And they came down, and Mark asserts that and he says this in the story, Mark thinks this is the first time that Indians of his tribe have canoed down the Milwaukee River since it was dammed in 1843. This is a historic moment, and it is commemorated in the book. This just happened last April, just before I turned in the manuscript in order to get it published. It was such a fortunate thing to have happen. And I forgot to put in the picture of the sturgeon. The other incredible story was written by Paul Smith of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and that reappears in the book. The DNR caught the first sturgeon in 150 years. And they caught 3 sturgeons this one day that Paul wrote about. And one of them was tagged, had been released by River Edge Nature Center as part of its reintroduction program. This is an amazingly historic moment for the Milwaukee River and the Milwaukee River Greenway. So there you have it. I hope we have time for a few questions. I want to direct your attention to the information here. I would love to have you check out the website, awealthofnature.org. I have books and I have cards on the table outside the room. If you don't want to write this down, you want to remember it, there's a card with this information on it also. But here's the book and the last few questions. I love questions. Thank you. As a former high school teacher, I love questions. And if you have any, I'd love to hear them. Thank you. That's a very important question. As I mentioned, the river was very polluted at one time. Thank you. The question was, what's the water quality now? Okay, thank you. I tried to remember that. I didn't try enough. So in the 1970s, of course, the Clean Water Act was passed, and that had a tremendous impact on the quality of the water, as it was intended to. I mean, that was the whole point of the Clean Water Act, and it worked. The most important consequence of the Clean Water Act was that factories and other what's known as point sources of pollution had to clean up their act, and it worked. The thing that it didn't control was non-point, sources of pollution, such as sewage and runoff from the landscape, like from farms upstream. And that's something that's still being worked on to this day. So that we're not out of the woods at all. But Milwaukee Riverkeeper, I used to be on their board. I introduced you to Cheryl Nen, the Milwaukee Riverkeeper. They keep a scorecard of how clean the water is, and it has improved over time. It's still not wonderful, but you can fish in it, as you saw many people doing. I don't think it's advised to eat the fish. Kiss and release is a good idea still. But there are now, I think, if I recall what Cheryl said, 33 species of fish, a native fish, in the river. And of course, there's introduced fish like the salmon, which are very popular for fishing. Other questions? Okay, so the question was, what is the differences in water level, but also about invasive species? Yes, unfortunately, there are invasive species. There are certainly some animal species and plant species, such as buckthorn and garlic mustard and that sort of thing. I mean, that's an issue anywhere in the urban area, any urban park, and it certainly is true in the Milwaukee River Greenway. The water levels, there are certainly some pools of water that are deeper than others, but the water level is more dependent on how much rain we're getting than it is on what part of the river you're on. If you kayak down the river in the spring, you're in for quite, when the snow is melted and there's a good head of water in there, you're in for quite a treat running a pretty rapid river. But in August this year, I wouldn't even attempt to kayak down, or canoe would be even worse, because there are some stretches of the river that are so shallow, you'd be walking your boat down the river from one point to another. So that the level of the water does vary quite a bit with the amount of rain that we're getting. Does that answer your question? There are certainly some deeper parts of the river, like Lincoln Park has some deeper portions. And what am I thinking? Most of the river is fairly shallow, though. Thank you. Not a question, but he wants me to thank, and I should have, he said, the army of people in the Milwaukee County parks, and I certainly do want to thank and acknowledge the importance of the Milwaukee County park system, and also the other communities. So there's Glendale and the village of Shorewood. They're certainly important factors in maintaining the stewardship of the Greenway, but Milwaukee County Parks does bear the brunt. Thank you. Yes.
Eddie, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Are there any statistics for how many people visit the Greenway? Are there any others?
Are there any statistics on how many people visit the Greenway? I'm sorry, I tried to find that information. There was a study done back in 2010. There was a survey. It wasn't a definitive database or anything. There was a survey of who hiked and who kayaked and who mountain biked and various activities. And the most common activities are hiking and kayaking, and I think those are the two most common ones. And there are a whole slew of like dog walking and stuff like that is also very common. But it didn't give raw numbers. You can get statistics on the use of the Oak Leaf Trail. I don't remember the exact number, but it seems to me it's somewhere in the order of 1,400 people a day at a high point on a summer day on the Oak Leaf Trail. It's just on the Oak Leaf Trail, which, by the way, I'm on the board of Preserve Our Parks, and one of the other board members, Pat Jersick, who used to be one of the county supervisors, you might know of her, she likes to say that the Oak Leaf Trail is the most well-used sporting venue in the county of Milwaukee, bar none, including Fiserv Forum and County Stadium, or whatever it's called these days, American Family Stadium. Yes, the Oak Leaf Trail is a very popular trail. So that gives you some sense. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Eddie, and thank you to the entire River Revitalization Foundation for your efforts to create and manage such a great asset for our community. Eddie, in honor of leaders like you coming to speak to our club, we're going to make a donation to the YWCA of Southeastern Wisconsin, whose mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. So thank you. Eddie's book will be available for purchase in the lobby immediately following lunch. A couple last announcements. Please join us next Tuesday for Captain Don Montoro, Sector Commander for the U.S. Coast Guard, who will be here to speak to our club. A couple final reminders. Rotary is hosting a book read this fall, The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. A group discussion will be held on September 30th from 4 to 5:30, and follow-up discussions will be held on October 14th and 28th over Zoom. Special thanks to Paula Pennebaker for leading these discussions. If you'd like to be a part of those discussions, please let Aaron in the Rotary office know by the end of this week. We are 2 weeks away. Starting Tuesday, October 5th, will be our inaugural breakfast meeting right here, starting at 7:30. Breakfast and presentation starting from 8. By 9 o'clock, everybody will be out of here. So again, mark your calendars for that. Also mark your calendars for the Thai Rotarian at Granite Hills on September 30th. A couple last announcements. Hike Milwaukee, a fundraising event for the Urban Ecology Center and the Milwaukee Rotary Centennial Arboretum, will run from September 25th until October 2nd. Rotary has 55 complimentary tickets, so if you are interested, there's a series of different hikes for different ability levels. Please contact the Rotary office to get some of those tickets. And if you are interested in joining a conversation about what we as Rotary can do to help provide support to the Afghan refugees settling in Wisconsin, please meet immediately after this in the Rotary office. And if you aren't here physically, please contact the Rotary office to get added to that group. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you to for Eddie for joining our club, and let's go out and do some good in the world. This meeting's adjourned.